Good morning and welcome to today's edition of Kaus Live. My name is Michelle Ponto and I'm from Kaus Communications. Our guest today comes to us all the way from Sweden. His name is Dr. Samuel West and he is the curator of the Museum of Failure. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning.
Samuel. How are you doing today?
Excellent.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about this Museum of Failure. I've been doing a little bit of research on it, and it's not a normal museum. First of all, it doesn't have a static place. It seems to be a pop-up. So what does that mean exactly?
Well, you're right and wrong. The permanent sort of location for the museum is in Sweden, in the southernmost part of Sweden, like right about an hour from Copenhagen, Denmark. And that we're moving, so it's closed right now, but it'll open again this spring in Sweden. And the idea is that that's the permanent home. And then we have a touring exhibit, which opens in Los Angeles in December. And then here at Kaust, we have a little sort of a teaser. It's a pop-up museum that's just sort of 9 or 10 of the best items.
Okay.
So it's kind of confusing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit all over the world.
Yeah.
But eventually we'll have a permanent home.
Absolutely. I hope so. Unless we fail.
So what is it like to be the curator of the Museum of Failure?
Well, it's still kind of new to me because I've only been we opened in June. And I don't know very much about this whole museum world. And being a curator is a completely new title. I like it. It's fun. One of the sort of positive side effects is the fact that I can fail, and I can just say, like, if I would, mess up on this interview, I can say, well, I'm the curator of the Museum of Failure, So it doesn't really matter what I do. I don't really have to be worried about failing. It's nice.
Yeah, that is nice. So what is in the museum? Tell me a little bit about some of the things that people would see if they came to an exhibit.
Yeah, we have. There's about 80 different products and services at the museum, and the whole idea is to try to get a wide variety of things. So not just have failed technology, or just we have failed business ideas, or innovative business ideas. We have failed food products. Some stuff that's just stupid, like silly inventions that should never have existed. And yes, so each one of these objects that are displayed at the museum they're presented with a story, like what's innovative about them and how did they fail. And that's what I think is so fascinating about failure, is that there's so many good stories that we can learn from.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You answered it a little bit, but we'll get more into it. So obviously some of these failures, the products actually work, or the things, the machines or whatever they are, actually do work, but still they are deemed a failure. So what makes something successful?
Well, let's answer what makes something a failure first, because the sort of academic definition of failure is that it's a deviation from expected or desired outcomes. So if you have very high expectations for something, then you invest a lot of money into it, for example, or time, prestige, and it doesn't turn out the way you expected, then that's a failure. And for consumer products, for technology, usually that means that it's a commercial failure. So then if you turn that around and say what makes something a success, well, if it exceeds your expectation, or meets or exceeds your expectations, then it would be considered a success. Yeah.
So if you have low expectations, then you never fail.
The key to happiness is low expectations. Well, if you look at it from a business context, anytime, innovation costs money. It doesn't matter which field it's in. And when you start investing money, you expect some kind of return on your investment. It's risky because it might not create any kind of return. But then you're expecting something to be a success commercially as well.
So give me an example from one of your museums. So something, obviously the person thought they had a great idea. They made something, it worked. They had high expectations, went out to market, didn't work.
Yeah, that's basically the story of all of our products at the museum. An example would be, for example, the let's say the Nokia N-Gage. It's a little like a smartphone sort of thing, early one, from just around like 2002 it was. And so Nokia was at the time, you know, the top dog. They were the Apple of mobile phones, and invested a lot of money into this product, which combined a regular phone with a gaming sort of console. It was a gaming phone. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a really great idea.
It's a very cool idea.
Yeah, and at the time it was very innovative. So their expectations were, of course, that this be a huge success, which it was supposed to be, of course. But then they got the design wrong. So to change the game in the gaming phone, you had to disassemble the entire phone, take out the battery, just to change a game. That's
too cumbersome.
That's
Okay.
too much of a pain. So that was one design flaw. Another design flaw was, in this case, was that to use the phone, I don't have my phone on me. Usually you hold the headset like this to your ear. For the N-Gage, you had to hold it sideways and hold it like this. And it maybe doesn't seem like that strange, but it feels weird. And people started mocking the phone, calling it the taco phone, because you hold it like a taco. There's these things, and then they also failed by not working with third-party developers and making fun games. So you can't sell a gaming device without games. This is maybe not the best illustrative short example, but it is an example of how something is sort of expected to be a success. You put a lot of money and resources into it, but for a number of reasons, things start going wrong.
No, that makes perfectly good sense, because as you said, the pitch of the idea is brilliant.
It's a great idea.
Great idea.
It was a great idea. And there's a lot of some of the products in the museum are just stupid. They should never exist. We have a Bic, the French pen manufacturer. In 2011, Bic released a pen for her. Bic Pen for Her is the name of it. So it's a pen designed specifically for women. Now, yeah, because women can't use regular pens. You're probably one of those. So Bic thought it was a great idea to launch a pen designed specifically for women. It's designed for the hands of women, which are completely different from the hands of men. And they came in feminine colors, because women like those kind of colors, and glitter, of course. And because women make twice as much money as men do, the pens cost twice as much as a regular pen. So the whole idea there is just bad. It's a bad idea from the beginning, but no one said no.
Yeah.
So comedians, people made fun of Bic for that stupid decision.
But yet they have razors for women and other things that somehow work.
It might work in certain markets, but not in all.
But not in pens.
No. I mean, if you design a new coffee mug for women.
For us.
Yeah, yeah. So some ideas are better left in the brainstorming room with the Post-it notes, and then just don't do anything with them. And then some ideas, like the Nokia N-Gage, is a great idea, and there's technology to back it up. But then the innovation process is so complex, and there's so many different ways that products and services can fail along the way. That's why I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I had read, I'm going to bring up some stories from your past.
Oh, wow.
That you have tried to do some things in the past that have also not been as highly successful as you thought they were going to be.
It's the story of my life. I'm still waiting for Museum of Failure to be a failure.
Tell me a little bit about your experience and learning from failure from your own personal experience.
So just to add on to that, I'll get to your question, I'm not avoiding it. The whole sort of idea, the whole message that the museum wants to communicate is that we need to use our failures and the failures of others as a learning opportunity. right? So I can't say I'm perfect at that because I haven't learned that much from my failures. I try, and one of the main sort of failures I've experienced with all my crazy fun business projects and research projects is that I get so excited about the actual, the focus of the project, and I ignore the money aspects because I'm not. I mean, I want money, but I'm not that interested in it. So I kind of neglect it. And what happens, it's happened at least 3 times before, where I'm all excited about a project, but as time goes on, the project can't survive without money. It's not so much fun, but I mean I hope with the Museum of Failure that I'm smart enough to learn from the previous mistakes, so I don't let the project die because of money problems.
Do you have friends or family that say, Sam, have you thought this one through?
Yeah, my wife tells me that about, I don't know, every other day. I mean, the thing is, I find it very easy to generate new ideas, and then I like to actually, implement them. But I mean, just because you have an idea and you move forward with it doesn't mean that it's a good idea. And so me, just like everyone else, we need the feedback from other people. But at the same time, other people are not always, your friends and family are not always the best judges of whether something is viable or not. Sometimes you just have to take a risk and see what the market thinks.
Okay. So you mentioned that part of the goal of the Museum of Failure is to help people realize that you can learn from failure. But of course, still, as yourself, you are a diehard innovator.
Yeah.
You can't stop yourself.
No.
You're going to just keep doing it.
Even if it's a bad idea, I'll probably do it anyway.
So what can people learn from their own failures, and how should they look back on it and say, okay, like you look back and you've seen a pattern.
Yeah.
You need to think about how this is going to make you some money somehow.
Yeah. I mean, learning from failure is difficult because failure hurts. We're hardwired to want to avoid it. We're hardwired. We learn early on as children it's something that, we should blame somebody else for our failures or try to, cover them with, distract people from our failures, or sugarcoat them in some way. So it's human nature to want to avoid it. But what I would like to, with the museum and sort of with the attention that the museum gets, is to say, propose, it does hurt. I mean, it hurts even if you're a big company or as a private individual, and let's face that, and let's accept our failures as individuals and as companies, organizations. And when we accept it, okay, I messed up on this, then you're open for learning from those failures. And the learning, there's no way to pinpoint exactly, it's not straightforward. ABC, learning from failure. You have to be able to sort of take in the big picture.
Okay. Is there any time, or what warning signs do you think people should look for? They're innovating, things are going along, and maybe there's a time when they really should say, this idea it's time to kill it.
One early on is when everybody loves your idea. Like, if you surround yourself with friends or people who just cheerlead you and applaud you no matter what you do, then it's they're probably going to cheer you on even when you're on the way to total catastrophic failure as well. So be wary of when you don't get feedback, when people say your new coffee mug ideas is not that great. If you don't hear some criticism, towards your idea, then you're probably not getting honest feedback from people. That's one. But sort of telltale signs, I think one of the themes of the museum there aren't actually that many themes because they're so unique, these different stories. One of the themes is when a product or service is overhyped. And you as a media person are partially to blame for this because when a product gets overhyped, our expectations are so high that the product or service can never sort of meet those expectations. And then the fall is much harder. So if you, I mean, it's fun. It's fun if you're developing, if you're a researcher, you're developing new technology, new methods, and you start getting media attention, and the funders of research start to say, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." It's really easy that it gets overblown and it gets overhyped, and then there's a high likelihood of failure there as well.
Yeah, I could see that happening in multiple fields.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely in science findings and.
Yeah, oh, we got this new research finding, and then all the attention, okay, but we found out that they actually cheated on their research. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, or the findings were a little bit less than what they thought.
It wasn't quite so spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could happen. But then, again, for Apple, it totally works. They hype up everything.
Yeah.
And we love it, even if we don't know how to use all the gadget parts on it, we just still love it.
Apple's fascinating because I think they're the only company I have 4 products from. Like, they have failed so much and so miserably. So the Apple you mentioned now is not the Apple that has always existed. They have, and they continue to fail. Everyone has an iPhone, sure, but they're not as successful with all their other business ventures. So we shouldn't polarize, successful companies, unsuccessful companies. The companies that are represented at the museum, Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, these are the big brands. They are successful because they innovate and they take the meaningful risk of failure. So Apple's not afraid of spending $100 billion on something and then, oops, it didn't work out. Sure, it hurts, but taking that risk is part of the innovative strategy. And that's when people ask, like, oh, but isn't it embarrassing for all these brands to be displayed at the Museum of Failure? In reality, it's embarrassing for the brands that are not at the Museum of Failure because they are not innovative. So there's no shame in failing.
That's a good point. That just shows that they are still risk takers.
Absolutely.
They're still trying to advance forward. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the same for science. For scientists as well. Once they turn into sort of, we call them fat cats. They have their funding, they have their prestige. They stop taking those risks and try to maintain the status quo. And there's not any innovation happening there. So taking those risks, and which involve the biggest risk there is failure. Spend 5 years on a project and it didn't turn out as you expected or hoped for. That's a failure. We need many of those to get the progress that we want.
That's true. We were talking just before the interview, and you had said that the Museum of Failure is a way of communicating science in a different way. Tell me a little bit about the mission behind that.
Yeah, so I finished up my PhD about 3 years ago. I'm a psychologist, by training, and then I found that these academic journals and seminars, and they're quite boring, and nobody reads their article in the journal anyway, except a few peers possibly. And I figured, like, I wanted to communicate the research, not only about the importance of accepting failure, but learning from innovation failures. And the research is really interesting, but there's really no way, it wasn't presented in an interesting way. So I just got a eureka moment. I wanted to, how about a museum as a way of communicating research? An interesting museum as a way to communicate research findings. And that's what the Museum of Failure is.
That's really interesting.
And I make a point in the museum not to sort of Voltaire, he said, the art of boring people is telling them the entire story. So at the museum, I really tried to sort of leave a lot up to the visitor. So they, to stimulate the interest rather than cram information down their throat.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Another thing that I've noticed about the Museum of Failure, just looking at some of the products in there, is you could see people's thinking, and a lot of it is almost science fiction thinking, like it is still way out there, which is very cool that they took the chance of not just imagining it, but actually trying to make it in some way.
Do something, yeah.
What is one of the most science fiction-y kind of things that you're thinking, we're just not ready for this yet?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, yes, okay, this one is a bit of a fraud. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fraud.
So was a company, a European company that found some kind of obscure research on how your brain needs light. So we all know we need sunlight, for our well-being. Okay, so this company found some kind of research and piggybacked on that, saying that your brain needs light. Okay, so they developed they look like headphones, like these in-ear headphones. So, but they weren't headphones. They were little little LED lights at the end. So the idea was, this is not long ago. This is like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. So the idea is your brain needs light. All right, so let's stick 2 lights into your ear and shine light on your brain. That makes sense, right?
That makes sense.
So apparently it was marketed. It's a pretty cool. I mean, it's a sleek, cool-looking product, well designed and everything. So it supposedly cures jet lag, it cures depression, and a whole bunch of other things as well by shining light on your brain through your ears.
I'm curious on how many of these they sold, because I can see some people buying this.
Yeah, I talked to a guy who worked. This is a Finnish company. I talked to a guy who worked at the the most prestigious department store in Finland, and he worked in the electronics section. He said he sold a lot of them the first couple of months for like 200 euros a piece. That's a lot of money,
Yeah.
But he said that the price dropped rapidly. It's a thing where somebody's like, hey, let's make something, and they put all this effort into designing a really cool product without actually maybe doing their homework, that shining a flashlight in your ear isn't going to do anything. Maybe in your eyes it would have worked, but not in your ear. Stick it in your nose, like, come on, people.
At least it wasn't like a tinfoil hat.
Yeah. I mean, and then there's stories where I know Kaust is like an engineering sort of, so a cautionary tale when engineers decide too much. That's a classic, one of the biggest bankruptcies in American history is the Iridium satellite phone. So Motorola joined forces, and the satellite phone brand is Iridium. So the idea was in the 80s, like, hey, let's send up 66 satellites. You've heard of the satellite phones, yeah. So the engineers decided everything. So it was a great engineering product. It was a impressive feat of engineering. 66 satellites in precise orbits, and you use your phone with a big antenna on it too. You could use it anywhere in the world. Fantastic product. It actually still works today. The problem was it was just so expensive. So nobody could afford or wanted to use the phone. And it was very impractical because the phones were big and bulky, expensive to use. So a phone that's so expensive to use, you never use it, isn't really that valuable. You couldn't use it indoors because you need the satellite signal. There's a lot of things that were flawed when the new cell phones started arriving. The Iridium didn't have a chance. And the interesting thing here is that if you look at I'm telling you a very short, condensed version of the story, but the interesting thing is how if you look at the progress of the Iridium phone, the engineers were kings.
Yeah.
Now I know engineers like to be kings, definitely, but the problem was like, what's in it for the user? What's in it? Where's the business model? And those came in second place. so the project was a huge bankruptcy. Yeah, I mean it's fascinating. And then there's funny ones like, you know, down at the pop-up we have a calorie-free fat substitute in potato chips. Okay? Have you heard of Olestra?
No, I haven't heard of
Okay, so 1996, one of the biggest consumer products sort of and food companies in the States developed a calorie-free fat substitute. Now this is like the holy grail of food science.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it tastes good. Everything was perfect. So they, the big brand names of sort of potato chips and snack foods, they went crazy. Like, hey, we have a calorie-free fat that tastes good, and you know we can make our products out of it. So I'm building up the excitement here.
Yeah, because it's like the NutraSweet of fat.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's perfect. There was only one small problem with that, and that was that the product caused explosive diarrhea.
Oops.
so you didn't get fat, but you sat on the toilet all day. I mean, it's hilarious, you know. But it's 96. It's not that terribly long time ago.
No.
And big companies involved, and they found this fantastic. It was a fantastic innovation, but it failed because the side effects were not that fun.
Did it hit the market before?
Yeah.
Oh, so people actually experienced it.
Oh yeah. It was banned in the European Union and in Canada. But yeah, the can that's down at the pop-up museum, it's from I think it's from Mexico.
So you can still find it in the world.
I don't think you can still find it, but it's not. I think the best before date on that can is 2015, 16. So it's not that long time ago. Crazy.
Your museum is a crazy place. You know, as a kid, you always dreamed about if there's something bad in the world, you want to be locked in the mall because you can find everything. Your place, if you were locked in that and something bad happened, you would be like, lights in my ears. Should I eat this? No.
That'd be the worst place to be locked in.
Yes, everything could kill you.
And you'd be missing out on the failure outside too. So
that's true. So one last question, we're getting close to the end here, is everyone loves the underdog. So I'm sure you've heard lots of failure stories. Tell me a story about where somebody had failed and failed and failed and failed, and then finally what they did became a success.
Became a success. How much time do we have left?
We can go for another 5 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I have a little bit of a problem with that question because then it's framing failure in the narrative of success. So sure, I'm saying we should accept our failures and learn from them to be more successful innovators. But I really want to avoid the whole falling into this sort of idea that failure. There's a lot of cliches out there, like failure is just the empty space in between success, and you have to fail forward, fail faster. There's a lot of sort of glorification of failure from the pedestal of success. So if somebody is a successful entrepreneur, scientist, etc., then they can, from the glorified position of success, if you're Bill Gates, or one of the big Silicon Valley dudes, then from the stage of success, then you can say, well, when I was younger and less experienced, I made a lot of mistakes and I failed a lot on the way. That's framing failure, sort of in the success narrative. And we see this all the time, where failure is so difficult to handle that we prefer to only mention it as sort of a route to success. And what I'm trying to say is failure most often doesn't lead to success. It's just failure, period. And they're still learning from that. So does that make any sense? So while I do like these stories of somebody who failed and then suddenly became successful, I think there's a little danger there of then trivializing failure because, oh yeah, that was just sort of a detour before the person became successful. because most of us just fail and fail and fail and never become successful. So a story, I thought about it. It's sort of it's an example that's used quite a bit, but it's kind of fun. Colonel Sanders, from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Mm-hmm.
So he was quite. I think he was. I can't remember exactly how old he was, but he wasn't 32 years old when he became successful with Kentucky Fried Chicken. He started. I mean, he had many failed sort of business sort of adventures before he stumbled across his 11 spices and herbs and spices to create Kentucky Fried Chicken. I kind of like that story.
No, I like that one too, because you always say success is for the young. Or,
yeah. No, you can be successful in your past 40 as well, 50.
That's good. Well, we're out of time, so this was a great conversation. If you want to hear more from Dr. Samuel West, tune in today at 5:30. He will be speaking at an Enrichment and Fall program at Kaus, and we will also be streaming his keynote speech live, so you can tune in on Facebook as well. Today at 3 o'clock, we have a 20-year-old inventor from Canada who will be coming in to talk about her inventions and how she innovates. And we have more guests coming up later this week. See you later.